Welcome back. You're listening to Get Real, and I'm your host, Bob Gallagher. Joining me today is our guest, Eric Rollo, with William Ravis Back Bay office. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thanks, Bob, for having me. I appreciate it.
So you work down in the Boston area. Why don't you give the audience an update on what's going on with the Boston market?
Yeah, absolutely. Just before the election, I saw a pretty significant slowdown in terms of buyer activity, but in the last couple of days, we've actually seen a lot of listing activity, which was interesting. You know, a lot more broker tours and a lot more inventory hitting the market. So it seems to be picking up, which is unexpected this time of year, just before the holidays. Market time is still really low. The market's still strong for sellers, and there are still those bidding wars that we were seeing in the last couple of years, but it's definitely dropped off from last spring, where you would see 10, 12 offers on a given property. Now it's usually between 2 and 5, depending on what neighborhood the property is in.
Right. But you said it's picking up. Are you talking about buyer activity, or is it also new houses coming on the market or new condos coming on the market?
No, in the past few days, I was surprised to see a number of new listings hit the market, which, as I mentioned, is kind of not typical for this time of year to see stuff pop on right around the holidays.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't really have an explanation for it.
Yeah, a week away from Christmas, people don't usually list, but it's good to hear. I mean, we're seeing the same thing out in Metro West. I mean, I shouldn't say the same thing. We're not really seeing new listings coming on, but the buyer activity is definitely picking up. They're just having a hard time finding anything.
Absolutely. I think that for the savvy buyer, this is actually a really good time to get into the market for someone that's really serious, because those sellers that are still on the market at this time are probably motivated by something, whether it's relocation or they already have something under agreement and they need to sell. So it's a really opportune time for buyers, I think, to be jumping into the market right now. So, people jumping off the sidelines right around the holidays, it's kind of an advantage for a buyer, I would think, at this point. And especially with lenders struggling with closing times, they're not quite as busy now, especially with interest rates rising. I think refi activity is down a little bit as well. So, it's an opportune time for buyers to be able to make aggressive offers and get into something within 35 to 45 days if they're in a rush.
Excellent. And that's, I just want to go back to the point you made at the beginning of that, which is that if you're listing your home for sale, a week before Christmas, then chances are you're motivated to sell. You're not just testing the waters.
No, absolutely. I mean, there has to be some kind of underlying motivation for someone to be listing a week and a half before Christmas. And we see a lot of relocation activity in the city this time of year. It's a really popular time for relocation buyers to pop into the market, just because they have time off around the holidays. But also, this is when companies are beginning to think about their transfers for the spring. So we do have a number of people that are thinking about listing. In the past couple of days, we've received 4 or 5 different home valuation requests on my team alone. So there are people out there thinking about making a move at this point.
Excellent. Now, when we talked before we got started today, you said that you kind of specialize in the $600,000 to $1 million range, but you go all the way up to 12 plus million. Why don't we talk about what buyers are getting for the money right now in that range, that $600,000 to $1 million range?
No, absolutely. I had the opportunity to show a listing at Millennium Tower, one of the penthouses, just the other day. And when you're at that price point, that's listed at $12.5 million. You're looking at just over 4,100 square feet, 3 beds, 4+ baths with outdoor space and 2 parking spots. But the big draw there is the luxurious in the full-service building. So, that type of buyer is usually for me, it's been out of state or international looking at those types of properties. And they're viewing this as kind of, it's the hottest property in Boston right now, but they're also looking at it as an investment. The gentleman I showed it to, he looked at it as, okay, this is trading at around $2,800 a foot. Other units in the building have traded for upwards of $3,100 or $3,200 a foot. So he's looking at some instant upside in his eyes. When you get down into my more normal price point, around 600, 700, 750, I'm seeing a lot of first-time home buyers jumping into the market. They're tired of renting in Southie or in Charlestown, and they're looking for value in areas like Jamaica Plain. And then all the $1 million range to $2 million, we're seeing a lot of folks in South End Back Bay, and they're picking up stuff between 1,400 and 2,000 square feet, between $1 million and $2 million, and 2 beds, 2 baths, sometimes 2.5 baths with outdoor space. So it kind of runs the gamut. But I'm seeing a lot of value in areas like Jamaica Plain, Charlestown, And even there's some opportunities now in the South End for parlor garden units that seem to be good value for the neighborhoods that they're in.
So there's really a lot out there. I mean, it all depends on what your budget is.
No, absolutely. And that's something we focus on with our buyers from the onset, is kind of what's going to be the best fit for them given their budget. And we really try to narrow down those neighborhoods from our initial meeting to 4 or 5 neighborhoods that might be a good fit, and then funnel it down from there.
And why don't we get into that a little bit too, Eric? That's one of the things you mentioned earlier was lifestyle assessment to kind of target where the buyers want to end up. If you're somebody like me or the people in the audience like me that live outside the city. I mean, when I think of Boston, I think of anything in Boston is the city. I never really think about the different neighborhoods you may want to end up in. What's the driving force behind picking one neighborhood over another?
It really, when we sit down with buyers at our initial meeting, and this all stems from my relocation business, because you only have 3 or 4 days with a relocation client to really narrow down their focus and figure out what might be the best fit. So what my team does is, with that first meeting, whether it's in person or via conference call, we sit down and we do both a lifestyle and a needs assessment. And the needs assessment is easy. That's your basic. What's your budget? Number of bedrooms, number of baths, any unique needs, is in-unit laundry requirement. Do you have any pets? So that's basically just a checklist. But then we talk a lot about lifestyle, both inside and outside of the home. What does the buyer like to do? Are they big entertainers in the house, so that they need an open concept with kitchen and they want that outdoor space? Or do they prefer a neighborhood where they can pop out and have, bars, restaurants, and galleries within, a couple of blocks of their home? And when we sit down and talk about that, we can pretty quickly narrow the focus. So if someone says, they want those great restaurants around them, we might focus more on the South End, Jamaica Plain, maybe the waterfront or Seaport. Whereas if someone says, they're looking for a more family-oriented neighborhood with green space and walking trails and that type of thing, we might focus again on JP, but also on areas like Charlestown, where there's a lot of, there's a good sense of community, a lot of like moms groups and things like that. So we're pretty good, I would say, as a team, of really narrowing it down to 4 or 5 neighborhoods before they get here, and then spending that first day touring those neighborhoods, really letting the client get a feel for those and figuring out what might be the best fit, so that on days 3 or 4 of their visit, or of their, the third or fourth time that they visit with us, we're able to, really have it focused on 1 or 2 neighborhoods.
Now, do most people that you talk to about this sort of thing, about buying in the city, are they coming from other cities, or are they moving in from the suburbs, or is it just totally different parts of the country?
No, it's a big mix. I mean, we do a lot of relocation business, and a lot of that is with the pharmaceutical and the biotech industry right now. We're seeing a big boom in those types of companies moving folks to Boston. Mm-hmm. And then we also work with a number of first-time home buyers, just because of my demographic and my sphere. I'm working with a lot of folks that have been renting in the city, and now they're deciding to put their money into equity in a home. And a lot of them are rushing to do so before rates continue to rise. So it's a really big mix of both internal renters turning to buyers and folks coming from either out of state. A couple of years ago, we had that big push of empty nesters moving into some of the larger buildings and wanting to be downtown, ditching the car and wanting the opportunity to be able to walk to entertainment and restaurants. I've seen that drop off a little bit, but it's still happening. But I would say for us, more so, we're having folks that are moving from renting to buying, and then moving from out of state into Boston.
Gotcha. I'm glad you brought that up about the cars. Most of the people that you're dealing with, do you have a car if you're living in Boston, or you ditch it and save the money, because obviously you're paying a premium to live downtown?
Absolutely. I would say 90% of our clients are trying to either eliminate their car or use it the least amount as possible. The number of folks that I have that say parking is a definite requirement is probably slim to none at this point. That being said, when we take listings, we do try to, even if a place doesn't have parking. For instance, we had a listing on West Springfield Street in the South End. The owner had a rental parking spot, and we actually agreed to give the buyer a credit for that rental parking spot to pay for it for a year. And you'll see that happen with listings in Boston quite frequently. You'll see one parking spot, but it's identified as rented, and they will transfer that rental for a year prepaid.
Wow. So most of the stuff doesn't come with parking.
Not when you're downtown, unless you're really paying a premium. I mean, everyone's seen those stories in the Globe and elsewhere about parking spots in the Back Bay trading for $500,000. So you can imagine the premium that provides.
$500,000 for a parking spot?
A couple years ago, something traded on Commonwealth Avenue. It was a $500,000 parking spot. That's correct.
I mean, if that's not an incentive to get rid of your car, I don't know what is.
Exactly. I mean, the fact of the matter is, when I lived in the Back Bay and in the Fenway, parking, if you learn the schedules, parking on street isn't necessarily that hard, but it is a hassle when you get to this time of year and you're shoveling out your car on the street. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun. And you see people trying to save their shoveled out spots with lawn chairs and traffic cones. And imagine it. You end up with a few confrontations throughout the year, especially around this time of year.
Oh, for sure. The best one I saw was a water heater in South Boston sitting in the middle of a parking spot.
So if you're going to get that spot, you're going to have to do a little more work than getting rid of a lawn chair.
Exactly.
Smart guy. Why don't we talk a little bit more about how you educate your buyers from the start? I know you got into the lifestyle assessment a little bit, but what else do you do to educate them on what they're going to be looking at? Because obviously the market's changed a lot over the last 5, 6, 7 years, where it used to be you kind of had your pick of whatever property you wanted to go buy, and you didn't have a lot of competition. Now things have changed a lot. How do you prep your buyers for what they're going to be facing?
Well, I think that's one of the most important pieces of the buying process, is having an understanding and expectations of how the buying process and how the market's working right now in Boston. So after we do that initial lifestyle and needs assessment, we actually sit down with the buyer for probably a half hour, 45 minutes, and run through the entire buying process, go over all the paperwork at that point, and really educate on the fact that, for during the busy markets, listings come on Wednesday or Thursday. They have open houses Saturday and Sunday, and there's a call for offers by Tuesday. And educating the buyer on that up front and how aggressive they might need to be, especially for out-of-state buyers, is sometimes a shock. So getting that out of the way at the beginning is really important to us. We sit down and make sure that they're connected with a couple of lenders at that point. Explain the condo process for folks that are looking at condos, that we're going to review the condo docs and do all of that with them and with their attorney. And then kind of just go step by step. This is what's going to happen. And we do that using the actual contract to purchase forms and kind of looking at it from that perspective as almost a calendar. Like, here's your checklist and here are the dates that are important. And then instead of having everyone sign, all the agency disclosures and contracts electronically, we actually send them that digitally after the first meeting or at the first meeting, so they can get a good handle on our digital signing platform. Because there's nothing like, Tuesday at noontime when offers are due at 1 o'clock, trying to teach a buyer and coach them through how to sign stuff digitally in that stressful situation. So we try to eliminate that stress by getting it out of the way up front, educating them on the systems, and teaching them how to use them on that first day.
Excellent. Before we go any further, I want to give out your contact info. So if there's anybody listening that's thinking about buying or selling in the Boston area, give Eric a call. You can reach him at 508-789-8830. Again, it's 508-789-8830. Or check him out on the web at ericrollo.com, and that's ROLLO. One of the other things I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, Eric, is how you leverage technology in your business, especially with regard to social media.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my team has really embraced social media and technology. We've moved, I don't want to say entirely away from print. We still do a lot of print advertising, but we're not really farming neighborhoods or anything like that with postcards anymore. We'll advertise our listings via print and things of that nature, but we're not trying to acquire new clients using print. We're leveraging Facebook in a really big way. And we do paid advertising on Facebook, really targeted advertising on Facebook. And what that's done to our business is, we expect about 30,000 visits to my team's Facebook page each week. And for our listings, we expect to put those in front of anywhere between 8,000 and 15,000 people that would actually be interested in that specific listing because of the neighborhood it's in and what have you. From that, we generally expect about 1,000 to 1,500 engagements. Sometimes we've gone all the way up to 3,000, and we're able to acquire buyer clients for our sellers at a pretty good clip. As I mentioned to you before we got on the call, we picked up probably about 10 viable buyers for one of our listings just in the last 24 hours.
Wow.
So we're really leveraging Facebook to put sellers' product in front of the right people and get the most people through the door to sell the place for top price and in the little amount of time as possible.
Right. So really things have changed quite a bit, not just in terms of what the buyer is going to experience, as far as the process goes, where it's so much more competitive now, but it's really shifted, especially in the last few years, away from print and media advertising. It's more shifting online. So it's the reason that you want to work with a professional real estate agent like Eric, because you need somebody to help you navigate the entire process, whether you're buying or selling. So I want to give out your contact info one more time, Eric. Again, it's Eric Rollo with William Ravis, Back Bay office. You can reach him at 508-789-8830. Again, it's 508-789-8830. Or you can get him online at ericrollo.com. I want to thank you for joining us today on Get Real, Eric. It was great to have you.
Thank you for having me, Bob. I appreciate it.
Great. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with more Get Real after this.